Welcome to the Fulfilling Career Happy Life podcast. I am so excited about this season of the podcast because, as you know, we're going to be inviting executives from different areas to talk to us a bit about their career path and their reflections to hopefully inspire the rest of us. And today I am thrilled to have Innes Meldrum. Innes is the CEO of AdhereTech. He has a really impressive history of sales and marketing roles. He's been chief commercial officers in both mostly big and also some small companies. And now he's in his second CEO position. But in addition to his impressive work experience, one of the reasons that I was so excited to have Innes on the show is who he is as a person and as a leader. When I think about leaders who operate in full alignment with their values and really walk their talk, Innes is at the top of that list. He really takes pride in his own accomplishments, but he always highlights the fact that no CEO does it alone. It's the contributions of the team that propel the vision into reality. He genuinely supports and invests in his people, which really fuels his company performance and I think separates Innes from the pack. So, Innes, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Oh, thank you, Randy, and thank you for that embarrassingly nice intro.
Oh, it's genuine and it's my pleasure. For our listeners, I've had the opportunity to know Innes for many years. He and I worked closely together earlier in our careers and have kept in touch, and I speak from the heart. And is anything you want to share? I mean, I gave the 30,000 foot view
Yeah,
of your career path, but any highlights that stand out for you or anything that you want to share as we get started?
sure. I mean, I think that I'm a big believer that you get one chance at life, and you need to make the most of it. So you need to lean in and maybe take some risks. And I think if you look at my career, I've made a bunch of career switches actually, which sometimes were well thought through and sometimes not. But I think whatever happens in any of these situations, you got to trust yourself that you'll either work it out or you'll learn something either way. And I think that's one of life's great opportunities is to learn. You get to meet so many fantastic people along the way. So I've kind of tried to embrace that, I guess, throughout my career and maybe zig when others have zagged and people are like, why the hell are you doing this? And, because it's a challenge and I want to learn and experience as much as I can.
Yeah. You've always been a person who's very motivated by challenge, so that makes a whole lot of sense to me. The questions I want to ask really are in relation to you sort of reflecting back on your career to date and some of the decisions you've made. What would you describe, as someone who loves challenge, what would you describe as your biggest challenge?
As has been my biggest challenge in my career, you mean, or
Yes.
um, arguably the job I'm doing now, quite frankly, because it was one of these roles that I knew was a bit of a turnaround, and I probably didn't appreciate how much or how long it would take, and how much effort and perseverance. And just a little bit of context, we're trying to disrupt the pharma industry to a certain extent, which is not an easy thing to do if you're a small player. So I think that that's been one of the key challenges. And there are points at which certainly I've felt tired. I'm very big on, I think you need to, in order to be able to operate at the top of your game, I think you need to be physically in shape as well as mentally in shape. And I think the two are tied together. So I'm very disciplined. I work out in the mornings, intermittent fast, ice baths, all that, because I think that allows me to be as sharp as possible. Having said that, even, there are times over the last 16 months in this role where it's been a real grind. And I'll be honest, I'm like, are we gonna be able to do this? Are you gonna be able to get there? But I think I've been very fortunate that the people that I work with are very committed to the cause, are very supportive of me. I've been very fortunate of that, and I think that I've learned, I think, about the importance of grinding. A lot of things I think early in my career came fairly easy to me. I think quickly, and I'm extroverted personality. Um, as I've gone into more senior roles, things get tougher, and I think you need to dig inside and kind of. I love I think it's the SEAL team kind of saying that embrace the suck, and I think that's what leadership is about. I think leadership is far too often thrown around in today's society, especially in corporate setting. Everybody's got a leadership title. Leadership is really defined when the going's tough. It's easy when everything's going well. It's not really leadership. I'd actually argue that's management. But I think there's very few people who are willing to, when the going gets tough, to not seek an easy out via politics or whatever, but actually to take decisions that involve risk, either personal or business risk. And as a result of that, there's a risk of failure as well. But I think if you expect to have breakthrough results, which are obviously tied to leadership, then I think you need to be prepared to do that. And I think the other aspect of leadership is, will people follow you willingly? And I think that people will only do that if they see you leading by example. So I do try to live that. I think you have to lead by example. Part of that is the risk taking. If you want other people to stretch, it's unreasonable to ask them to do it if you're not willing to do it yourself. And I think at the core of that, kind of mixing a lot together here. But I think in order for people to follow you, they need to trust you. In order to trust you, I think they need to feel you're being authentic with them, which related to that, I think the root of authenticity is self-awareness. And emotional intelligence is rooted in self-awareness. But I think also an overlooked part is humility is it's okay not to be all-knowing, impervious, the kind of superhero leader, which I do think in American culture in particular, obviously I'm Scottish, but I think it's a big thing here. But I do think that people open up more to you if you demonstrate humility and get rid of that ego. And that was something I learned when I worked for Otsuka in particular, Japanese company. This was a big credo for them, and I actually think that's at the core of it. So admitting that, look, I don't have all the answers. I do make mistakes as well.
So there's so much wisdom in what you said. I love it. And one of the things that we talked about, the elements of leadership both involve risk for sure, and this element of followership. And one of the things that I find in the executives that I work with is the risk, the challenge, the stretch is one of the things that's got to be there in order to motivate and
Hmm.
really sort of be who you are and be at your best. But you have to have that awareness, that EQ, that reading the room to look around because the people that are following you aren't necessarily at that same level when it comes to risk, and you've got to be going there with them. Wow. So there's so much there. Thank you. Another question in us is reflecting back, is there anything that you think you either did or didn't do that might have been a way that you sort of held yourself back or got in your own way? I see a smile.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think we've got
excited
long
for
enough.
what's
We don't
going
have long
on.
enough on this podcast to cover all of them. But there was one actually that always struck. I think there's. We were talking a little bit before we formally started this that there's kind of pivotal moments I think in a lot of people's careers where you get an opportunity to take a risk and do something and stand out from the crowd. Um, and either you embrace that or you don't. So I'm going to give you a good example, I think, of when I didn't do that. So you'll probably remember this back in when I was working for Novartis and Global, we had the CEO was Thomas Ebeling. And there was a bunch of 20 or 30 of us were brought together, the high potential folks, whatever. And he went around the room and he said, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And my initial instinct was to say, I'm Innes Meldrum, I'm Scottish, I'm married to Jane, et cetera, et cetera. Not so much the work focus, but more the personal, because he said, tell me about yourself. However, I was in the middle of the room, so we'd gone through 10, 15 people, and everybody said, here's my career, job title, here's what I'm doing, career. And I chose to do the same. So he went around the room, and at the end, he said, I asked you to tell me about yourself, and you all told me about what you do. And that was such a missed opportunity for me. And what, quite frankly, the root of it, I was scared to stand out.
Mhm.
But I think that that's about leadership and that's about taking that risk. And actually, that was really a pivotal moment for me because I then at that point said, okay, I get these type of opportunities again. I'm going to be myself, even if that means I'm different. And we're all different. We're all great in our own way. And I think I've been able to embrace that. I was also very fortunate. Another leader that I worked for, Carol Lynch, if you remember,
I do.
Carol said to me, I wanted to go on stage and really like knock it out of the park and really leverage my extroversion, but I was incredibly scared of doing that because what if you fail? And it was Carol that said to me, she says, you need to trust yourself. She says, you're good enough to do it. And I did. And that was such a breakthrough moment for me. It gave me so much confidence in my own ability, but also to take risks and trust myself to work it out and move forward with it. So a couple of pivotal moments for me there.
No, thank you for sharing those. It's so interesting because I think about the example that you gave when you were in the room of executives, and I could picture it when everyone was describing themselves, and you sort of chose to go with the pack and go against your own instincts, perhaps. And that turned out to be not what he was looking for. But it's what I love is what you said next, which is here's how I would handle that situation if I were faced with it again. You didn't describe, oh, what I should have done was this or that. It's more, all right, that didn't feel authentic to me. Here's what I'm going to learn from it and handle it differently. And you were lucky to have that situation where Carol really encouraged you and pushed you a bit and you took that risk. I mean, what a sort of bookends of lessons. Really interesting.
Absolutely. No, I think, I'm a big believer everybody has huge potential within them. I think the people that truly realize it to achieve great things, whether it's business or personally or whatever, they're the people that lean into that and are willing to be themselves, which everybody says, oh, be yourself. But that's a very difficult thing to do in today's society, arguably even more so than when we were younger because of all the social media and everything now. You
Yeah,
put
everything's
yourself
out in public.
yeah, you put yourself out there to be knocked down. But I think we're all unique, and if we go back to authenticity is at the heart of leadership, how can you be the same as everybody else, try and model yourself on everybody else and be a true leader? I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've worked with clients about this kind of topic and sort of defining themselves as leader and both defining who they genuinely are, but also who they want to be, who they aspire to be as a leader. And sometimes it requires a little bit of a mindset shift. Like rather than see ourselves as someone who has the answers, knows the path, we could see ourselves as someone who has really good instincts and can course correct if it's not quite right. And that can give you a lot of permission to try some things, to take those risks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely part of it. I think the other aspect there is the people you surround yourself with as a leader, and not just the people that you work directly with or report up to you, but the people that you meet throughout your career, like our relationship. And I think the willingness of people to give it to you straight and not soft soap it. I think, one of the things I realized as you get more senior in leadership, a lot of people will tell you what they want you to hear, not necessarily what you need to hear to be successful or whatever. So I've always gravitated to those people who have the courage to tell me I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid or, I am not all that. And I think that I've found that if you should pay disproportionate attention to them because they're vested in your success. And if they're willing to take that risk and go out there, they're probably right. And in most of my experience, they certainly were. So I've tried to do that. And this comes back to the humility part and listening and then adapting. And I think we also, I was talking to somebody recently about this, we need to give ourselves some grace. I think there's a lot of pressure societally, corporate wise, everything like that, to be perfect. To be human is to be flawed. We're all flawed. I think we're all working hard, trying to be the best version of ourselves we can. So I think we need to give ourselves the grace to do that and be okay and accept the fact we are going to make mistakes. Hopefully, you don't make them consistently, and you
Or
learn
at
from
least don't
them.
make the same ones
The
twice.
same once, twice, exactly. But I think I think today's society is very unforgiving in general, but especially of leaders. We have unrealistic expectations of our leaders. And I think that, aspiring to be a strong leader requires us to be okay with that. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out. And I mean, you'll really, I think mentally it'll take a huge toll.
Yeah. A lot of times it's, one of the ways we can show leadership is to acknowledge when we are responsible for something that didn't hit quite right. If people understand why we've taken that calculated risk and made that choice, what we think we, would do differently if faced with it again, and bring them along to solve it, the whole energy shifts rather than try and prove, oh, that person was wrong. Everybody tries to get on board and help make it better. So, it can be a real learning opportunity for everybody.
I agree.
Thinking back on your career journey, what has surprised you?
I think there's a lot of things surprise me. I think
One
where
that we can
I
talk about. Remember, this is going out to listeners.
yeah, it's okay. Good context. I think one of the things that's been amazing to me is, where I started, I come from a small town, blue collar town in Scotland. And, I never, the opportunities I've had career wise, never knew these jobs existed. But I think as I kind of started to experience it, then it opened up my eyes and I realized it's a big world out there. There are so many opportunities, but I maybe didn't have the traditional background, the traditional education, all that kind of thing. So you have to lean into it and you have to be prepared to take risks. I think that most people, not everybody, but most people get opportunities, a similar number of opportunities in their life. I think that it depends how you are prepared to accept or embrace those opportunities. Because I think you can have a growth mindset or you can be scared by it. And I think that what differentiates people that are really successful is those people that look at an opportunity as change and a threat. And they're like, okay, I don't want to do that. They shut down. And I think that's probably the majority. But then I think the people that are truly successful look at an opportunity as an opportunity. And it's like, you know what? This is what it could be. I don't know fully how to get there. I'm going to lean in. And I think I've always been very curious. Since I was little, I guess. And I've tried to lean into that as I've gone through, and it's amazing the opportunities I've had, the experiences I've had, the people I've had the opportunity to work with, to learn from, and I come back to, I think that you get one opportunity at this life, and I think we all have huge potential. I think you owe it to yourself to kind of lean in and really experience as much of it as you can. And I think that's been the biggest surprise. If I look back, myself and my wife Jane, we're both from the same town. We reflect on it periodically about where we are now. We never dreamed that, the experiences, the life we're living, everything was even possible for us. So.
Yeah. That's you said so much there in terms of, really having that growth mindset, which enables us to take risks and take chances and take advantage of opportunities. And you also mentioned something about curiosity and leaning into that and letting that lead you. And I really believe curiosity is a leadership skill if you use it right. And I've seen you do that. It's
Yeah,
good.
I think I was a bit of an annoyance to my parents because I was always asking why. I go, why? But why? And it's funny, our daughter Annika, who's just graduated GW, but I remember actually we had a friend from Scotland come out, and Annika was a little girl, and she was talking to Louise, and she kept Louise would answer, and then she says, "But why? But why?" And after about four or five but whys, Louise turned around and she says, "Does she ever stop asking?" I says, no, we're encouraging it. I think that there's so much, and especially nowadays, we have access to so much data, more than anybody in humanity ever has. There's so much to learn. I mean, the world's such a wonderful place, and there's so much new data coming out every day. I mean, I think it's such an amazing, one of life's great privileges is to have access to that. So I think we need to take advantage of it.
Love it. Thinking about your career, might be different phases, whatever comes to mind for you. What do you wish you hadn't worried about?
Not being successful. I think I have taken a lot of risks and stuff, but at the same time, as we talked about a little bit earlier, there have been times where I didn't trust myself, and it took me. I think when I was early in my career, I was very emotionally immature, and I only matured much later, probably in my mid to late 30s. And I think prior to that, I would talk a great game, but a lot of it was bravado, and I was really scared, and I didn't really embrace it, and so I think I wasted maybe the first, I don't know, third of my career really, by not really leaning into that and really taking advantage and taking the risks that I probably should have.
Interesting. Anything that's come to mind for you? Any other thoughts you want to share with our listeners as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think one of my key learnings is that a lot of people, if you're going to take risk and you're going to take a decision that a lot of people find strange or uncomfortable for them, they'll tell you, don't do that. You can't do it. You won't be successful. What I've realized is they're not talking about you, they're talking about themselves. And what they're doing is projecting. Because if you take the risk and you're successful, that will force them to actually have to look at themselves and say, why didn't I want to do this? Could I have done this? Or maybe I couldn't. And I think that's a tough conversation to have with yourself. So if you look at likes of Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, anybody that's kind of created great disruptions or whatever, they've trusted themselves, but they've had so many naysayers saying you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. But that's really not you can't do it, it's they can't do it or they're scared to do it. So if I had one piece of advice, is trust yourself.
Wow, that's so good because it's really easy to many of us, if we're trying something new and we're taking that risk, we're aware of it and we've thought about the pros and cons and the possible pitfalls and all of that. So that's in the back of our mind. And if someone else speaks to that, that can really interfere and we hold ourselves back. I think that's really important. That's really important. How do you do that? Like, how do you put that into practice?
Well, so I don't know if it's my Scottish nature. I'm a little bit contrarian by nature as well. So it's almost like, this was something I had from when I was younger. I think that people would tell me, I've spent my whole career with people telling me this, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show you. Sometimes just out of sheer pig-headedness, because I like to push buttons and stuff. But I've felt that, if people are saying that, obviously, you've got to listen. And I think it's like anything, you get advice. You can choose what you accept or not from that advice. But I just I enjoy pushing against the status quo. I enjoy disrupting things. It's just part of my nature. Hence, kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing at the moment.
That's fantastic. I mean, that goes back to one of the things you mentioned earlier about your own self-awareness and being so, rock solid in who you are. And yet you as a leader, as I mentioned in the beginning, really very effectively manage that while being, truly soliciting the input of others and taking that in. It's a real model. I appreciate. Thank you so much, Innes, for sharing your thoughts. It's been none of what you said, like the value of what you've offered doesn't surprise me a bit, but I'm just delighted with it. And I thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. It's always great to talk to you, and thanks for the invite.
Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.